Today I sat down with Josh Dittrich. He's the founder of BrandedSeller, an Amazon brand management agency, and also the proud owner of multiple eight-figure exits, helping both grow from scratch and acquire brands and help them to exit. We have a really interesting conversation about life post-exit and what it's like to build some of these sizable brands. Again, as always, I hope you get as much out of this as I do. Welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I talk to world-class professionals on what it takes to scale successful businesses. I dive deep asking questions to people who are running unicorn businesses, to raising funds, to buying businesses, mergers and acquisitions, IP and patent law, what is to manage performance management. I mean, the list goes on. The idea really is, how do I create knowledge and learning for you guys listening in? And of course, myself, getting the floor with people who I, in many cases, would never dream to share a room with. Before we jump into the episode, I've got to give a special thank you to our sponsors. Firstly, over at Global Wide Advisors, a leading digital consumer products investment bank focused on optimizing the sales process. An incredible team, always happy to pick up the phone and educate you or anyone about the sales process and what you should really consider, and can obviously help take you to market or even acquire businesses. I ring them for just about everything these days. Us over at Multiply Me, we are the end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, helping find better talent and onboarding them effectively. And last but not least, Escala, our management consultancy focused on process improvement, where we help build better systems for your business. That's all the ads you're going to get from me, ladies and gentlemen. The rest is all about learning. I hope you really enjoy and get as much out of these sessions as I do, sitting face to face with some of the world-renowned leaders in their respective fields, asking them the tough questions that they're not often asked. Josh, welcome to an episode of Successful Scales. Thank you for jumping on.
That's all good. I appreciate you having me on and being here. This is great.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've had a pretty good opportunity to have a couple of conversations, and honestly, every single conversation, it feels like it builds and builds. And, you know, I know it's only been probably a couple of hours that we've interacted, but I already feel like I've learned so much. And just looking at how you work and what you've achieved to date, it's nothing short of remarkable. I'd love to pass it over to you because you have an extensive history and are the proud owner of, multiple businesses, have had a lot of success to date and are building some super interesting things. So let let you do the work in wording people up on what it is your careers look like to date.
Man, I tell you what, appreciate the intro. I don't know if I need that level of intro, but I'll take it when I can get it, right? So here it goes. But I guess for those that don't know me, I was born and raised in Iowa. And the long story is, I'm the only thing good that came out of Iowa, according to my father-in-law. So I'll take that as well. But yeah, when you get your father-in-law to say that, nothing else matters, right? So we will take that as well. But moved to the Minnesota area from Iowa to go into video broadcasting. And the quick level is, I was passionate about video broadcasting and quickly found myself excited about sales and building relationships and, jumping into small business and making an impact. So while working at Best Buy in college, ended up working there for 7 years. I had a corporate gig doing B2B sales, and I was recruited by a customer of mine to really help him grow this e-commerce startup. A side hustle became a full-time job. 7 years in the making. After Best Buy was another 7 years making this commute 100 miles one way, with 2 kids at home, a wife working, to help this company that only had 10 employees. But I really cut my teeth and learned there that business, entrepreneurship, e-commerce was really my passion. And it was a great learning experience to be on the leadership team and eventually building that business up to 50 million with a team of over 100, all online. And so, I really learned there how to fail, but also how to win in e-commerce. And, I got fascinated by the transition from selling other people's brands. At the time in 2010, private label wasn't a very big thing. Maybe there's a couple players in certain categories, but we really jumped on board when we saw Target and Walmart start offering, Target's brand of Up and Up next to the Advil, or, the Great Value brand next to the Advil brand in Walmart stores. So we did that in water filters. So that business, thousands of SKUs, multi-channel, international, full-on ERP, had a chance to build systems and processes and tech, and really loved it. But the owner and I, we had a similar skill set and visionary. The difference was I could look 30,000 feet and I can get my hands dirty down in real time, in real life. And he had this big vision to build this $1 billion thing. And, we saw opportunity to split ways. And for me, that was good time to start a side hustle. So for 12 months, Yoni, I built a side hustle and, put money away until I replaced my income multiple times over to eventually go full time. And that's when things really exploded. The first year was, hey, what's the brand? What are we going to do? How are we going to launch our products? And that would be 2016. But, we made it our mission to be really good at new product development. So we built a brand called Essential Values that really allowed itself to be a brand that could lend it really nicely in any product category. So whether it's home improvement, home and kitchen, tools, sports, and outdoors, we could package up an everyday product and add value, whether it was, more solution, more concentrated and less heavy, multi-packs, things like that. We had a team of about 12, and we grew that Amazon business to 10 million before we sold it. So in parallel, we had a couple of other businesses going on. We bought a business in 2019 for 750,000 and later sold it 2 years later for 2.5 million. So those two deals we closed happened to be in the same year in 21. And so now, the next step is leveraging capital and the cash that we've earned from the business and investing it back into growing new businesses. And, today I'm here as I'm writing a book, talking about my journey, and on this podcast, talking about my journey, I'm helping other sellers achieve and maximize their exit. So I wrote this book called Aggregator Navigator, your guide to maximizing your Amazon brand. So that's where we are, and excited to talk to you about it.
Yeah. I mean, I know you would have seen me writing furiously down all the notes of things that have caught my attention. And that's on top of what I already knew about you and the conversations we've had about what you're up to today with BrandedSeller and the likes of. So, I mean, incredibly impressive history. I know you said I looked to talk you up a little bit beforehand, but it goes without saying that to invest that heavily in your growth, in your career, and to look at what opportunities are out there and actually take them on with both hands. It takes a special someone. I mean, you could have stayed at Best Buy and been happy, right? It's not, it's a great opportunity for a lot of people. And yet you took that opportunity to really look at what was out there in the world. And, it's resulted in multiple exits, the start of it, what sounds like a number of very exciting ventures. And I think when we're about to dive into it now, I'm going to learn a lot. Obviously about your career, but I think, as I'm always trying to gear this podcast, it's, what's the intrinsic value that people can take out from your journey and the lessons that you've learned along the way. And I think the first thing that sort of struck me is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you were making that transition, when you were working multiple jobs, and you said that at a point in time, you got to a salary where you paid 2 and 3 times over. Were you already a father of 2? Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say by then I was a father of 3 going on 4, maybe. Yeah. So it's hard to keep it all together timeline wise, but yeah, 5 kids.
Yeah. Well, I guess with 5 kids, it's probably challenging, right?
What year was that? Okay. That's right.
So, I mean, as someone who's going to be a father soon myself, it's definitely one of the things that I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably never even hit the start button. They have all the ambition and the capability, but there's obviously that level of security. And, it's not just about being a family man, but in general, a lot of entrepreneurs never actually hit the go switch because the unknown is scary. And, to me, especially with the responsibilities you had at the time, you took a very intelligent and measured way in doing it. And, I'm really curious to learn, when you were going through that process, like at what point and why did you decide to start that side hustle when you had a great job at the time? And also, was it always the driving objective to become, the business owner, the I mean, I'll stop there and I'll let you sort of take over here.
Yeah, no, that's kind of a fair assessment. I mean, I think growing up, though, I had a father that was, he calls himself an entrepreneur. I call him a solopreneur. He created himself a job. And, there's trade-offs. Everything in life has a trade-off. And the thing about my father, my dad, was he was home every night. He wasn't traveling around doing business deals. And I saw him as this, mogul. He was a regular guy, and he was a father, and he played ball with us, and he was home. He was a business owner. The difference was he created himself a job. Right. So his job required when the phone rang, he had to go service the copy machines. Now, on the other extreme, I had a very wealthy grandfather, and at 80 years old is still driving truck. He owned well over 100 trucks, and pretty amazing man, worked very, very hard, always had money, but it seemed like all he cared about and his priorities in life were showing up and working. Right. And so neither of those were very glamorous for a guy. I'm like, geez, there's got to be a better way. Let's find a way to have money work for you. Well, you need money to do that. So what can I do to build something and scale something that doesn't always require my time? So if you've ever been in sales, you got to keep going back, each year with higher sales goals and often less commission, right? Because the man is structuring the deal. And I was tired of someone telling me how much I was worth, right? Even though I was part of this great business, this business that drove significant growth from, like I mentioned, 3 million to 50 over 7 years. I was part of that. And I just had so much confidence that I experienced that it was my time to go do that. And so I took what we were already doing, what I already mastered inside that business, and found a way to do it elsewhere without being in a non-compete situation, right? And if I can take the concept of identifying product niches, launching a brand, which I had already done, be direct to consumer, be multi-channel. There wasn't a ton that I needed to go learn because I had all that knowledge. So it made a lot of sense to do it, with the least amount of risk as possible. And that's doing things nights and weekends at the end of the bed. My wife wondering what the heck this guy's doing now, right? But it doesn't come without sacrifice. Like, you'd see me sitting on the couch, flipping through the phone, doing the next thing that needed to keep the business moving. And those are the trade-offs. And I'm still having to backpedal and work on relationships, both with my wife and my family, because it was the sacrifice I made. On the flip side, 2021, I wake up in the morning and my schedule's planned. But if I truly don't need to, if I truly don't want to, I find ways to prioritize my family, go have lunch with a kid that's right down the street, go play pickleball and work out with friends. Although maybe you could relate, but when you hit a certain age and all of your friends are working, it is a tough spot. It can feel lonely. So it's just the importance of having to continue to stay fresh in opportunities and engaging yourself with the gifts God gave you. So for me, that's, continuing to build businesses and finding ways to improve existing sales channels, processes, products, services, whatever it looks like. I'm just wired that way. So it's really a matter of when, not if, I left full-time to go full-time entrepreneurship. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't calculated risk. That's right. What does that word even mean? Yeah.
Well, so looking at that move and sort of, moving into really sort of realizing your potential, let's say. And I say that from a position where I look back historically. I grew up in agency land. Like my background, I worked at creative and digital agencies, and that was what I'd always done. And I think that, when I took that step away from having, a manager, having a boss, having, someone else's vision that I didn't always agree with, I felt like they were maybe getting 5, maybe 10% out of me, because I was always thinking, well, how would my manager look at this strategy piece that I was putting together? And then how would the owner look at how she would look at it, and then how I would produce it? And it became very stifling. And, when I left working for other people, I think that the first thing I realized was that wasn't the culture that I wanted to create. And so like things like single threaded leadership and, giving people true ownership of what they're delivering and building, we were talking before about 4 disciplines of execution, and building goals that are everyone's aligned and driving the same direction became really important. So, I mean, this is a long-winded question or a long-winded segue here to say, you went off, you actually built a brand, you took it to 10 million. Was the objective always exit? Like, did you start that at, you've moved away from really diving in deep to your entrepreneurial roots and who you really are as an operator. Was exit always the intent, or were you going to build and see how it went?
Yeah, I think it's two driving forces. Absolutely. One was mostly unlimited earning potential and getting your time back, right? That was an initial driving force. And I think that's a fair assessment, because not everyone realizes or thinks whatever they decide to go build will be worth value. And it's okay. We intentionally decided to build something that we thought would have value and hope to sell someday. So yes, going into it, we knew what we built was going to be an asset that could sell. But the very, very beginning was like, get me out of here. Let me escape this corporate reality, right? So twofold for sure. But I think the driving force is when you think through the lens of, am I building an asset of value? Puts it into perspective and how you get there. So for example, in the company that I helped grow from 3 to 50, there was a high emphasis on revenue growth, because in the market, in the position and the intent to sell, the industry we were in was rewarding significantly high growth in revenue, not necessarily profitability. But that landscape, that mindset has drastically changed when you think about an Amazon FBA business. While growth on revenue is great, but if you're not making money, you're not creating that value, right? So we carefully dissected that structure, which means, we try to operate, via GAAP, and we try to operate in best practices with our accounting and legal teams, the consultants we use to get our books in order the way, a big company would want to see them, and making sure we move to accrual before we had to, right? So these little things, always in the back of our mind, knew we'd worked in an enterprise level organizations before. That's what good looks like. That's what standard is, right? So it's certainly helped set the stage, but never did I think that it would be only a 5-6 year journey, to see 2 exits that were, 8 figures. And that's the part that I'm still like, even today, it's been 9 months, right? Wrapping my head around like, wow, this is just, a dream come true. And I just I just so wish that so many people can experience that. And that's kind of what started the whole family of businesses, Bright Ventures, we call it, Bright Ventures companies, is really to enable individuals with ideas and tools to be successful. So we use a lot of contractors. We love bringing the help that we need to people that are also investing in their success, whether it's a side hustle or some guy on Fiverr. These are guys that are out there trying to make it work. And so, ultimately that became really the mission to see a culture and a business and an asset become something great, leveraging what we know in our brains to build something that we couldn't do by ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. You've really got me thinking here about a few things. The first is, I want to take a step back. 2 successful 8-figure exits. I mean, congratulations, mate. That is no small feat. So I'm sure you've heard it time and time again, but well done. The thing the thing that I find really interesting, or I'm curious to learn a little bit about, is you said that you acquired a business that was at about 750 in revenue, and you also took that for 2 or 3 years and you sold that too. You were running multiple businesses at the same time. Just curious to learn a little bit about like the decision around the acquisition, like why then, and why did you look to acquire a second business, and also like strategically aligning, was it a business that was aligned with what you were currently doing, and so you could sort of leverage of your existing infrastructure, and that was sort of the driving objective here? Like, how did that opportunity present itself? How did you manage to run both in parallel? And yeah, just talk me through a little bit of the strategy behind it.
Yeah. I think you said something key here, and I haven't heard too many people say it, but leverage the leverage, right? And so, capital is one thing to leverage. Human capital is another in a team's capabilities. So for us, actually, the long story short version is, it first started with my business partner. So a guy that I worked with at the company we helped grow, we were playing racquetball 3 days a week together, and we both had the same itch. Like, eventually we want to do something for ourselves. So to be honest, the very first thing we decided to buy together was a promotional products business, something completely unrelated to e-commerce, but it was okay. We had an individual identified already that could run this small business It came with a warehouse and a couple employees. And we were okay whether we worked in that business or not. It was a starting point to bring income in the door. It was basically a company we bought that was bringing up, significant cash flow that could support a small team. So we started with that. That gave us the warehouse. In parallel, my side hustle began. So we had this business that was running. My partner's sister was time for a change. She came on board. She was our first employee running that business. I was engaged from the side, as a helper advisor, business owner, but really not active. I got really active as the side hustle building first Amazon business. So that's business number 2. That business came into the fold, not after maybe 60 days, 90 days, as we started launching products and seeing products take off. We needed a warehouse to have them deliver to. We needed to FBA prep. We needed to pick, pack, and ship. So it made sense to have that team in place rather than having packages show up at your door and have to turn around and bring those to FBA, right? So that made sense. That was in line. The promotional products has now pivoted and become more of a service business. It's rebranded and it's become more full service, supporting e-commerce and distribution. But that was the play, thinking that could be, really the platform that we're building. So business A, promotional products, become service. Business B is Amazon. As we're building both of those, our accountant called us. It was December and said, "Hey, I have this interesting opportunity. An employee of mine has a really unique business and they're losing money. It's mostly online and they need help." And we're like, well, let's just be honest here. We had a great year. We have some income that we could really afford to find a way to get creative and reduce our tax liability. Let's see if we can pull this thing off, because it had e-commerce, Amazon. It was Vendor Central at the time. It had Shopify D2C. We're already doing fulfillment. And it had B2B, which was really just about bringing orders into the system and making sure they're shipped out complete. All of those things we could do and had experience doing. So here we go. We bought it right. And that's a lot of the deals. If those entrepreneurs that are considering, sometimes it's not about how sexy it looks. It's about how well you buy it, because if you have a certain level of confidence into where it needs to go, buying it right is the difference between, making something or making a lot, right? And so that kind of really gave us the confirmation that we could do this over and over again. This platform is an e-com set of tech, a warehouse, some people, processes, all rallying around the same vision to build and grow online brands. It fits into the mold. So, we have these 3 assets now under 3 different businesses, different DBAs, but using the same team. So we had one payroll and we just contracted services to that payroll company. Everything else ran lean and mean. And so we could easily create a P&L that didn't have to look confusing and cloudy. We just simply allocated the expenses that need to be allocated to. So the strategy was ultimately we could have 1 asset, 5 assets, 20 assets, as long as they fit into the mold, that fit into the need for a product, that need for a shipping service, the need for FBA. It makes sense, right? So that's sort of how we got there. But, the time to sell is always the question. And that particular one in 2020 was a massive year for that business. We were selling hockey training aids. So as you can imagine, all the kids at home during COVID needed great product to train and get better with in hockey. So massive sales increase, great increase in profitability, and really made sense to explore selling that business at the end of 2020. It was through that process, listing with the broker, that I really realized that our Amazon business, our business number 2, had a lot more value to an aggregator than this hockey business that only had about 35% of sales on Amazon. The aha moment turned on. Wow, these multiples are high. There's lots of buyers everywhere. And it led me down the path of maybe we should consider selling our FBA business. And so my partner and I, we said, let's do it, put together a plan and ran a whole process. And so we had 2 businesses going down the path of sale, one with a broker and one through a process that I ran start to finish. And I would say it was some of the most fun I've ever had, running that process. So those that have sold a business can relate. Sometimes it's also very stressful. But there is certainly a level of energy that, I found in doing that.
Yeah, I can imagine, given especially what you're looking to build out now with the book, with what you're doing with Branded Seller and the new models that you're very intelligently developing. I can see how that energizes you, and obviously, the part at the end of the rainbow is there too. So it also brings that incentive toward it. And
Yeah.
like you said, with Bright Ventures, it's about helping other people experience that, that life changing money. Let's call a spade here. Um,
Yeah. Right.
so, I mean, I got tons more questions, but the thing that you've effectively already answered, but I'm curious in terms of timelines. You said 9 months ago you had these incredible exits, and you're already onto your next venture. Was there a moment in time where you took a second, had a breather, thought, all right, I'm gonna enjoy a little bit of time off or recharge? Like, it sounds like you weren't particularly stressed through the process. You said it was an enjoyable one, but curious to hear, because I think for a lot of people, um, a few things. One, they look at just the exit, and if they don't have their next steps planned, I've heard people go into a state of depression, and I can understand that. You have so much purpose, and for a lot of people, they look and treat their business like their baby, and it'd be a stressful thing to sort of hand it over to someone else. But also, talk me through sort of what mentally, emotionally, and sort of future ventures look like for you in that journey.
Yeah, the last chapter of my book is called Life on the Beach, and it's sort of a question mark, right? Because that's the perfect vision of someone who sells a business for 8 figures, what they're doing next. Well, let's be honest, reality is much different than that. And for me and for many others, and there's a lot of reasons you touched on in purpose, like, oh, this has been my thing. I've worked so long for, so much for so long, like maybe I should just stop. But don't get me wrong. That there was a phase for sure. My wife called me a lost puppy. Like she saw that I was, randomly working on the book. And then I would go drive my motorcycle, and I would come back and I would hang out on the couch with the kids for quiet time and maybe even take a nap, but I won't say that I regret those things, but I will say I regret not doing it the way I should have, which is continue to wake up like we own the business and be very, very conscientious of the team that's showing up every day to help with the transition. We end up losing 4 people through the transition because as a leadership team, we weren't as transparent about what that would look like, right? And now it went from us servicing our brand to us, because we end up with a 12-month contract for both buyers, and we were able to then continue to service them to keep the team in place. Well, what we failed to do was realize the impact that a buyer, when they buy a business, they also need to learn, which means that comes with time and baggage to set up new suppliers, reiterate the processes that are currently being followed. Is it a VA doing that? Is that internally? How do you organize, that transition? And so we underestimated that, but I did, because it was summer, spend a good amount of time at the lake with my family. We took a couple vacations, mainly to recharge and to start thinking about, what is it that I want in life? What is my purpose? How was I wired? What should I do next? And, part of the book, the reason it got its own chapter is because this is an emotional time and there's lots of things to evaluate for what's next. So fortunately, because we knew we had a lease, we had a building, we had payroll, we were going to continue to operate. We started brand number 2 before we sold. We started Amazon brand number 2 before we sold it. And 3 months in, we had already launched, 15, 20 products from scratch, and we're going to do it again. So that was clear. That's more of a vision thing for me, because we had a team in place to continue to do that. But the question for me was, what do I get excited about? And so through this, I took a hard look at the process of selling the business. I took a long look at my skills and talents and gifts, and really came to the conclusion that after I was featured in a Business Insider article about having cold called 30 different aggregators and got 6 offers in my process, I said, man, let's write a book about this. I think so many sellers that are going through this aggregator age are looking to sell, and they only think the only option for them is hiring a broker. And what happens when you get an email from 1, 2, 3, 4 aggregators. Like they're sort of timid. Like, should I start talking to them or not? Well, if you get into the mindset of building a process to sell and a plan to sell, it's a lot different than just one day responding to someone who wants to buy your business, because you haven't gone through the process yourself to prepare, to plan, to go through this entire journey of knowing what the outcome will look like. So, I think ultimately helping, the next level for me is helping sellers see a successful exit and potentially navigating it on their own, the Aggregator Navigator. In certain cases, not every brand, not every business should be done that way, right? I think you would agree that brokers have a place in the space. And there are certain brokers I really rely on when there are more complicated deals. But at the end of the day, if you can build and grow and scale a brand to 10 million, I feel like you can speak to your brand the best. If you understand the financials, you can present your business in the best light. You can navigate the conversation as why it is you want to sell. What about your business is great? You're the best representative of your brand because it's your baby. Like, so for me, seeing brands get excited about the potential to exit for 6, 7, 8 figures is the next venture. But I found out some just aren't ready to sell. And so what went from this service agency of creating videos and enhanced brand content, it came to, we have this platform, we have all of these skills and talents. We can continue to help other brands prepare and grow for sales. So whether that means making introductions to buyers that are ready to buy your business and run a process, or us helping you get to that point by optimizing your current business to then see, maybe an extra $1 million or $2 million on your payday. And in that model, we simply partner with the brand to see a successful exit. We get rewarded for that. And I think if I'm the one selling a business, I would love to have a guy in the corner. Ultimately, that's my role now. I'm a guy in the corner to help a brand navigate the waters of selling their business to Amazon aggregators. So I get really excited about that. I have a bunch of calls. I'm doing podcasts, meet a ton of great people like yourself, Yoni. And, what a transition that I never imagined. But, the hard part was just getting to this point. The next part was, okay, how do I cast this vision to my team? How do I get them to rally around what we've done in the past is the past, but this is where we're going. So that's recrafting a mission, a vision, keeping our core values the same, but really being clear on how we're going to get to the next level and what the next level looks like for us. Right. So I would say that was almost the hardest part, but it certainly was for me, secondary to figuring out what it is we were going to do next. So yeah, all fun stuff, man. All part of the natural cycle, I think.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I mean, I was having a chat with one of the co-founders of D1 Brands, and they were looking to build, I don't know. I actually don't know who you sold to. And I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of red tape and NDAs that go into not knowing what brands.
Elevate Brands.
Okay,
Elevate
awesome.
Brands.
Fantastic.
They actually did a really great video. They spent a ton of money. If you go to elevatebrands.io on the homepage, I believe there's a great video featuring me. Is 4 minutes. They flew a crew out to our warehouse office and they did a fantastic job. Anyway, yes, D1 Brands awesome. Is also great.
That's awesome. I mean, we work with Elevate on both Multiply Me and the Escala side, and they're awesome guys, awesome vision, and yeah, I think you've made a pretty great decision in selling to them for sure. So I'm glad that you can actually talk about it. Another Australian mate too, right? As I talk to you, you got the Bell brothers there.
The Bell brothers.
Of them. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
For sure. So I was speaking to Yaz at D1, and he was saying, for a lot of people, when they look to acquire the brand, it's like, well, what is that next stage? And you're someone who's really, it hasn't been a lot of time, months. Let's call it, let's call it what it is. But you've already come up with how you realign your vision and how you know what your next chapter is and what's going on there. But I think for a lot of people, they're not as meticulous and calculated in what does that next step look like. So, I mean, any advice you would give to, because I'm sure, I mean, a lot of topics that come up is around exit. So any advice you would give to anyone who goes through that process, what are some of the things that helped you define what next steps look like?
Oh, this is great. So another aspect of the book in Life on the Beach is really this exercise, right? And at a really high level, it's really about aligning. And there's a Japanese word called ikaji. I'm probably going to botch that, but it's Ikigai. Ikai. See, look at that.
Ikigai.
I completely botched it. Yeah, there we go. So you get it. I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you knew that, because that just sounded terrible.
I'm definitely going to mess up the true definition. So anyone who's from Japan and understands deeply, I apologize too. But it's about finding your true purpose and your calling, where it's aligned sort of spiritually, emotionally, and where your passion is sort of what I take from my very limited knowledge of it too.
100%. If you look it up, you can see it's just a giant Venn diagram, right? In the middle is what you call a bullseye, or what I call a calling target, right? So the exercise, most importantly, is two things. Because if you got to first ask yourself the question, where does money play a role in my life? Is it something that I need? Or after you sell it and have a successful exit, is it something that I aspire to continue to grow and have my money work for me? But if you define where money is in your place, the rest of it's, that's the easier part. But the harder part is, what are you the best in the world? What are some talents that you have that makes you uniquely gifted and wired to go build whatever it is, right? And the other is passion. What gets you up in the morning? But the fourth component besides money that you in one more time in Japanese, ikigai.
Ikigai.
Ikigai. All right, I'll get it third time. Ikigai.
Like he's an ikigai.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I got it in my brain locked in. But the fourth is, what does the world need, right? And we live in this world, and just think about, specifically me, like the Jeff Bezos of the world literally has no idea how he transformed my life. Right? Like, what does the world need? And some people aren't even getting the full appreciation for what they've built, like a Bezos, right? He's just this billionaire, ultra wealthy guy. But think about it, man. The next purpose in life for him is like, life is limited on Earth. Do we have the need for life at Mars? Like, I guarantee you, I'm not thinking about life on Mars. Like, so your purpose is like, where do you find the intersection of passion and talent? And so building a spreadsheet and asking yourself a lot of deep questions. And again, in the book, it's actually a full exercise to start to get your head around these things. Like, what are the things that you enjoy? Was it, setting the vision, or was it working in the day-to-day dirty, right? Or was it creating processes that scale? Or was it just to be a good manager, to make everything is done right and on time? And for me, I'm not a good manager. I'm a visionary. That's how I'm wired. And so for me, I knew before I even started the business that I had great ideas, I could execute them, but at some point I wasn't going to be working in it all the time, and I needed to have a good team. That shaped the way I created this venture, right? So this checklist is literally a series of these questions that really help you explore you to determine where it is you go next. And it sounds simple, like in conversation, and I think it is. We don't have to overcomplicate things, but at the same time, at some point you have to put your stake in the ground and say, this is what I'm going to do. And how do you know that's it? Well, you're taking in signals from the market, signals from your team, signals from your capabilities, from your family, and all these things get carefully evaluated to kind of figure that next journey out. So anyway, maybe helpful, maybe not, but I think ultimately if you can find, skill and passion alignment, you're going to have no problem, doing whatever you do next.
I think that is fantastic advice. Honestly, I think that it reminds me a little bit of a course that I did earlier this year called Exit DNA with an incredible entrepreneur by the name of Mac Lackey, who's had 6 exits and is one of the more humble people you'll meet. And he talks about what he's defined as the great outcome, where you really sort of look into, where do I see myself every aspect of my life 3 years from now? What does my daily routine look like? What does my financial security look like? How do I drive toward my ikigai by putting down that framework, which sounds to be like similar to your life on a beach. Honestly, Josh, that is a fantastic sort of, I feel, culmination to the journey that you've had to date and sort of what the next stage is. I'd love to just, I know you're working on several things. I'd love to just pass it over and talk a little bit more about BrandedSeller and really anything that is going to help add value to anyone's life that if you were to touch their life, it would have, tremendous value and impact to them. So, let me pass it over to you. Talk a little bit about what you're working on, how people can get in touch and reach out and get connected?
Yeah, BrandedSeller started as a side project to kind of fill a void in our own business, which was we have this great, hero product, and we had a number of great hero products. But after testing, doing videos, with our hero product, we're like, holy crap, 20, 30+% of our sales in PPC came from video. I'm like, we have to scale this out more, but I can't do it at $1,500 a pop. There's got to be a better way. So finding a way to leverage human capital, more convenient, cost-effective way to really nail down the format in the video requirements or the enhanced brand content templates and requirements allowed us to really explore doing that aspect at scale. And so that was more of just a digital services model, and really ultimately where we thought it would go, because, videos, when at the time a year ago, when came up with this idea, it's like you have two options, right? You have a $1,500 fully produced, you have a script, you have someone speaking, you have a professional artist doing a voiceover, et cetera. And then over here, you have this, $25 video or $50 video that someone on Fiverr just took, PowerPoint presentation with some background images and, some text, and all they did was take your white image and paste it over it. We wanted something kind of in between. We wanted video content. And so that we were able to create a $99 product that creates, an Amazon video ready to be set up and advertised on Amazon. And, on the other side of the coin was enhanced brand content. Agencies were quoting me $800 to $1,000 to do enhanced brand content. I said, it's ridiculous when you have 170 ASINs, right? So, it started with that, and the hope behind that was to help other sellers do things more cost effectively. But that's led to now multiple services. So that first brand I told you about, that first company, we have sort of continued to pivot towards this path, not realizing we're going to end up with this model that says we have a warehouse, we have a team, we know how to FBA plan, we know how to inventory plan, we're great at customer service, we're great at chasing down inventory that Amazon lost, right? All these things, that's got to be a benefit to someone. And as we started exploring what we wanted to do, and this idea of making, BrandedSeller something bigger, I had some friends in Minneapolis here that said, hey, I'm planning to sell my business. You went through an exit. Could you offer some advice? Could you help? And I said, absolutely. And it ended up being an introduction to an aggregator that led to a sale. And the aha moment turned on that there is value in what I know. There's value in what I did. And not only that, I was able to be paid for that by introducing a seller to a buyer. So now I'm a referral partner for over 20 aggregators. And I call it, I'm the guy in your corner. So I partner with brands to help them potentially prepare for an exit, but then also make that introduction to have that warm lead, right? Like, who are these guys? Well, these are all vetted people. These guys all have capabilities. They all have capital, and they're all credible. I call it the 3 C's. If I can bring your brand within an hour to 20 different great buyers, I feel like that's a lot of value. Second to that is, what about the questions they ask, or the financial implications of knowing your data? What does your books need to look like? I come along for the ride. So because I have chosen to help a certain brand out, the buyer is going to pay me. I'm only going to partner with good brands I think can sell. And along the way, my goals align with everyone to help maximize the deal value. So through that process of helping other brands successfully exit, we've discovered that there are brands that don't know how to get to the next level, that they've hit the ceiling. If you're a traction person or an EOS person, you talk about hitting the ceiling. And that means the ceiling says you have a limit. You can't break through it. And for me, it's like, no, if there's a will, there's a way. There's a strategy. You've got to be diligent, put the process in place, and it'll work. And so we've done that now for a couple of folks where we're partnering with them to help them get to that level to then successfully sell in exchange for some capital, for an equity position. So I feel like, whatever we do now is in the light of, let's not waste the skills and the talents that we have, the team that we have, and let's redirect that to this model that helps not only the brands that are hoping to see financial freedom, but it also supports helping these guys, as a as an attribute of being a good person, right? And serving others. But beyond that, it's a great business model. Taking, someone from $1 million in value to $2 million in value is very, very hard. But taking someone from 200,000 to 300,000, or SDE, or 200,000 to 400,000 isn't as hard because the dollars aren't as big. And if you bring someone from $200,000 to $400,000 in SDE, your 4 times, 5 times multiple on that is significant, right? And so that's huge value to any brand that just doesn't have the enterprise level skill to have a 7 or 8 figure exit. We help bring that. So it is a unique model. I feel like there's a few folks doing it, but ultimately it fits into, the sweet spot of what we're good at and what we're passionate about.
Man, I love it. I love it. We were having conversations of some of the things we've got going in the background, and, very, very aligned. It's all about how do you create those maximum leverage win-win scenarios where everyone walks away and that you've made a great partnership, a great relationship, and a great outcome for all involved. So, mate, I would love to have this continue on for the next 5 hours. I've loved every minute of this, but unfortunately I've got to jump. Josh, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Looking forward to following along and seeing how far you take it. I'm sure it is going to be, maybe not to Mars, because that's probably beyond all of us right now, but probably to the moon. So thanks so much for your time and for your wisdom.
Thank you so much for letting me be here. BrandedSeller.com/landing. You can get a free book, copy of the book. I'm giving it out for free when it launches in January. And book yourself a free call with me, 30 minutes just to talk. And there's no sales pitch, there's no strings attached. So looking forward to connecting with anyone who's at that position where they want to plan and sell.
Awesome. And we'll put them in the show notes. So, mate, again, thank you so much. And excited to follow along.
Sounds great. Thanks, Yoni. Appreciate you having me here.